Let's now revisit our top story tonight on the government having defaulted on debt repayment on 3 loans from an international bank in the financial year ended June 2021. Well, the loans are for the construction of Arror, Itare and Kimwarer dams. And to put this development into context, we are now joined by Kimwarer, the Chief Executive Officer of the Institute of Economic Affairs. Thank you for joining us this evening. What really is the implication of the country's failure to repay these loans, as pointed out by the Auditor General?
Oh, well, I think the Auditor General just mentions that there's a risk because this default is going to lead to, of course, a case in court. And with that kind of signaling, the government of Kenya might have to pay over the long term for the interest and that. So that's the most immediate thing. It's not a lot of money, to be honest, but that there's a default is something to be concerned about. All
right. So the government has, for at least what we've seen, recurrently continued to state that public debt is sustainable. So does this revelation really disapprove that assertion?
Not necessarily. The Auditor General is very cautious to mention that part of the reason this default is because the government maintains that the matter is in court, even though the matter that's in court is between the government and the contractor who's claiming that money is owed because they have not been allowed to access the site. So that's part of the bigger problem. Mm-hmm. But that notwithstanding, the lender who already expected interest and some part of the principal loan to be paid seems to have, rather the timelines seem to have not have been missed. So obviously that's a technical default, regardless of what legal reasons the government may have.
And in terms of our credit ratings, where does this come to play? Does it affect us as a country?
Yes, I'm not too sure if international credit rating agencies are aware of this. It might affect, especially because the point for me is that it's insignificant in terms of the amount. Mm-hmm. But the point is, if it's a default, then it's a default. Mm-hmm. Even if this matter is in an arbitration court, it depends on whether they see that as government's inability or whether the government of Kenya is respecting the arbitration process. Mm-hmm. But it's not suddenly a good signal for Kenya's credit rating, which is already in a very poor place.
State. All right. So we do know Kenya has indicated its intention, of course, to go to the commercial market through Eurobond issuance by June this year. What really is Kenya's prospect in light of this revelation?
Well, it'll be tough, but I think that the Treasury is proceeding with this suggests that regardless of what the Auditor General has found, the thinking among Treasury officials and the Debt Management Office is probably that they can explain the fact that this is not a default because government doesn't have the money. It becomes a default in the sense that this is a matter that is being litigated. I hope that satisfies. But the reason for reluctance on our part at the Institute of Economic Affairs for our Eurobond is because it doesn't look like it's the right moment, especially because interest rates are going to be high regardless of whether Kenya has defaulted or not. And Kenya's main argument for debt management has been that the Treasury is trying to actually lengthen. Eurobonds and these kind of commercial loans tend to be very short-term with very high interest rates. So it's actually a reversal of what government says is the debt management strategy. So that's what concerns me.
Right. I know you've said this is a bit insignificant, but just to close this conversation, on a scale of 0 to 10, how bad is it, to put it into context for the viewer tonight?
Well, you know that it's bad. It's bad specifically because the Constitution does not contemplate that Kenya would default that debt. I mean, the Consolidated Fund Services, the biggest item in there is the debt payment, and Kenya has always been faithful in that payment, regardless of what other effects it has. So to that extent, obviously, it's a bad thing. So in my view, it's a 7.
All right. Thank you so much. Chief Executive Officer, Institute of Economic Affairs, Kimwarer, putting that